Rams GM Les Snead had some revealing comments about the Rams' plan this upcoming free agency, and we have some edge rushers that the Rams should consider signing or trading for. That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramley? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available over on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor. Join the party and subscribe to the channel. Trying to get to 12,000 subscribers. Also, drop those comments down below. We read all of them. We're going to start reading them on the show, but let us know down below. Do you want to see the Rams spend big money on an edge rusher? Do you want to see them go after a cornerback, offensive lineman, retain some of their talent? What do you think the Rams should do with their cap space this offseason? My name is Doug McCain. Friends call me D-Mac. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMac_LA. I've been covering LA sports for over a decade. The Dodgers for Dodgers Nation, SI 24/7 Sports. And as always, I'm joined by the Rams pre-half and post-game show host for the Rams flagship radio station, ESPN 710 LA. He just completed his 8th season covering your Los Angeles Rams, the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him on X at Travis Rogers. And on today's show, we are starting a series, What Went Right, What Went Wrong for the Rams in 2024. How should they spend their cap space this offseason? Les Snead had some interesting comments about that. But first, this episode of Locked On Rams is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get 150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Now, Travis, we're going to dive right into this one because really this season was about kind of biting the bullet on some of that dead cap. I mean, last season, you saw what they did. You traded Jalen Ramsey, you cut Leonard Floyd and Bobby Wagner. Clearly this year was about having a little bit of a reset. And the question is, what will they do with that cap space this offseason? You got over $40 million. You got a lot of options. And Les Snead had some interesting comments because there's all this excitement about it. And then he kind of popped the balloon a little bit by saying, he's basically not going to just go run out there and look to spend it right away. So I don't think we're sitting here today saying, let's spend all $40 million within the first hour. So seems like they're definitely going to be cautious going into this and selective with the players they're going to bring in this offseason.
Yeah, I think so. What's interesting to me is that the Rams have done the thing that I think that, you're hoping that your team does. I know I'll tie this back to another team that I know that you and I are very interested in as well as the Dodgers, is that when it's time to do something, they will, whether that's in the trade market, whether that's in free agency, whether that's getting aggressive in the draft, whatever it may be, that they're willing to do it if they think it's the right thing to do. If Les Snead is saying that they're going to be, not go out and spend all of their allowance on the first day of summer vacation, I get it. But it also may be if you find something you really like, they'll do it because we've seen them do it before. When they see a player that they want, they don't wait around. They don't wait for the perfect moment. They go and get the player that they want. They go and they get Jalen Ramsey. They go and they get Dexter Fowler. They go and they get Von Miller or Odell Beckham Jr., whoever it is. When they decide that they want a guy, they go get the guy. If they're being deliberate and they're being a little more cautious, I think that means that they don't absolutely have to have it. I think they've earned the benefit of the doubt. I think they've shown that they're got a keen eye for talent in both the draft and in free agency. And if they're going to have their foot off the gas a little bit, maybe not on the brake, but at least not mashing the accelerator to the floor, I'm okay with that. I think they've earned the trust of Rams fans to go into free agency, draft, trade talks with the benefit of the doubt.
Absolutely. They've absolutely earned that right. They have a Lombardi trophy to show for that. He also offered some other interesting nuggets. He said it's going to give you the element of, okay, is there a possible unrestricted free agent that we haven't really been able to acquire in the past? And it also allows you to, if you do make trades for veterans, you can take on their salaries. It gives you flexibility. And to me, that's Les Snead kind of hinting at the idea of, Yeah, we haven't made a first round pick selection since Jared Goff in 2016, but that doesn't mean that things are going to change this time around. I think there is a decent chance that if the right player becomes available, they would be willing to trade that first round pick. And I'm here to say that I'm all for it depending on the player, because where I sit right here, I say, look, the edge rusher position, and we're going to talk about how they struggled to get pressure with Byron Young and Michael Hoecht this season. The edge rusher position, it's not something you fix in a draft. If you go out there and get a verse and get some of the top edges that are available, those guys take time to develop. In year one, they're not going to come out of the gates and have a massive, massive impact. They could have an impact, but with how much they struggled last season, I think you got to go get a premier edge rusher, whether it be a Danielle Hunter, whether it be a Brian Burns, who they offered a big trade package to try to get a few seasons ago. Or I think for that first round pick, if Josh Allen becomes available for the Jaguars and he's not a part of their future, that is my guy. I'm trading that first round pick for him, and I'm not thinking twice about it, because he is the best in the sport. In the conversation for the best of the sport might actually be that. Or 17 sacks last season. He would change this defense right away, and we would say, okay, this team is all in on the Super Bowl in 2024.
Yeah, I like that. I'm going to steal a word from Sean McVay that he uses all the time. We want to have optionality, right? That when he goes into that, and I think that's what the Rams' philosophy is in the offseason as well, is having lots of options. You want to draft a guy? Draft a guy. You want to trade for a guy? Trade for a guy. You want to sign a guy in the free agent market? Go sign a guy in the free agent market. They've left themselves options in all three roads to acquiring talent, right? It's not like last year, they could only do it through the draft. That was their only option. In previous years, they could only do it through trades. This is the first time in a minute that they've had the ability to draft, up and down the draft, from the very early part of the draft, 19, to later in the draft, where they found guys like Puka Nacua and many, many other players, Kyren Williams in the 5th round. So they've shown that. You want to go make a trade for a Josh Allen? Great. You want to draft a guy that you see? You can do that. If you just want to buy a guy off the free agent market, go do that. It's the first time in a long time they have multiple options, and it gives them a ton of ways to fix the needs that they have.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like the Dodgers, they ate at home last season, right? They didn't go out there, have extravagant meals and eat at these 5-star restaurants. They ate that food at home, and they saved their pennies. And it's put them in a good position because they allowed themselves to develop that talent and see what they still had in Matthew Stafford. And you had a re-energized version of Sean McVay. And I think we're going to talk about Sean McVay a couple times this week and compare him to Kyle Shanahan. I think one of the most valuable things that Sean McVay learned this season is I can win when I have a significant talent disadvantage, right? And yeah, sometimes that was against teams that weren't playoff teams, right? Weren't the best teams in the NFL, but still, these are NFL quality players. And he knows now that you can plug guys into certain spots and he can have success.
Yeah, look, this is, you need all the things to work at the right times. You need to have the right money. You need to have the right players. You need to have the right flexibility. And then you got to have the two most important things that any NFL team needs. You need a good quarterback and a really good coach. Rams check both of those boxes. So you have those two things locked down. You can't go in with, I don't know if this coach is going to work. You can't go in with, I don't know if my quarterback can make plays when I need him to make plays. The Rams do not have those questions. Stafford and McVay check those boxes. Everything else, we can kind of figure it out as we go. And I think that's why Rams fan, the season is still going. We haven't even gotten a championship weekend as far as the conferences go. And I'm already excited to see what they do because they have so many options in front of them.
100%. We're going to go in depth on all these players and spend a lot of time breaking this down the entire offseason. And look, the Rams, they like to retain their own talent. We've seen them do that. And we'll see Kevin Dotson, Coleman Shelton, Demarcus Robinson, Akella Witherspoon. Will you go after those guys, or you try to make the splash signings, the Sues, the Robinsons, the Leonard Floyd? So we'll find out what they do. But the good thing, as you mentioned, they have so many options that can go so many different directions. It's going to be fascinating to see their roster build this offseason. But coming up here in our next segment, what went right and what went wrong for the Rams? There's an area where they really struggled that you need to know about that they had to fix this offseason. That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams.
All right, so the NFL regular season is over. We still have 3 football games left, right? But there are still tons of time to get in on the action with FanDuel. That is America's #1 sportsbook, because Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. You place one $5 bet, $150 is coming into your account in bonus bets, win or lose. You simply can't beat that. And the app at FanDuel, it is so incredibly easy to use. There are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays, always a fun time. You can find bets in the new Explore tab. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub. That is a great way to find some of the more popular parlays, and of course, so much more. You can bet the money line. You can bet spreads. There's a ton of ways to have fun at FanDuel, but you got to go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
And we are off and running here on Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday, free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available over on YouTube, so be sure to subscribe. And also want to send a special shout out to those every listeners out there. We appreciate you watching every episode, listening to every episode. If you're new to the pod, definitely join that Everyday Listeners Club. Right now, membership is 100% free, and you won't miss a thing about your Los Angeles Rams. Now, Travis, here in our second segment, we're starting a new segment. It's like horns up, horns down, but for the entire season. We got a horns up to start things off, and that is the offensive line. You had more cohesion. You had more stability. You had some missed time with Alaric Jackson and Rob Havenstein and Joe Noteboom, but for the most part, you did have stability. Steve Avila played every single snap. If you look at the Rams as far as the sacks go, they allowed 34 sacks in 17 games. That was the sixth lowest in the NFL. After last season, what we saw where the entire season was as a season of Squid Game, where you had guys dropping like flies, 12 different combinations their first 12 games. It was nice to see some stability and allowed Matthew Stafford to stay vertical for the most part, make plays in this Rams offense to really have a much better year.
Yeah, look, I mean, the most important player on the Rams is Matthew Stafford. The second most important person in the building is Sean McVay, right? But none of those guys can do what they need to do if the five guys up front don't do their job at just a basic level. Sean McVay can be the most creative play caller in the league. He can be one of the most innovative offensive minds that the league has seen in a long time. Matthew Stafford could throw a football 40 yards through a keyhole, but he can't. Neither one of those guys can do any of that stuff if there's no time to do it. And that's what was so exciting about this, because you go back, and if you, the everydayers will remember this, you go back to training camp. We talked like, man, I got to see what that thing looks like up front. I got to say, I don't know what it's going to, we didn't know who it was going to be. There were so many different pieces that were moving around. And Sean McVay said it. He goes, we got 6 guys for 5 spots. We're going to find the 5 best guys, and we're going to put them in there. And that's exactly what they did. They were lucky in the sense of they were healthy. Most of those guys got through the season in one piece, or if they did miss time, it was a relatively short amount of time. They made a great acquisition in Kevin Dotson right before the start of the season. He grabbed that right guard job and never let it go. So you had a lot of different guys there. A guy like Joe Noteboom gave them some depth at 4 different, they didn't need it at left guard because, like you mentioned, Avila was, the one guy that played every single snap of the season. But the other 3 offensive line positions that's not center, Joe Noteboom could fill in capably at all 3 of those spots. You didn't have to get really deep in your offensive line depth chart like we saw him have to do a year ago, where there were 12, 13, 25, a million different guys playing on the offensive line. It was the kind of, it's the basic engine of what you're doing. It needs to be NFL capable, and it was a bit of a surprise, and that's why they had as much success as they did.
Absolutely. And speaking of engines, the big thing was you didn't total any cars, right?
Right.
You totaled all those cars last season. You had to continuously replace guys. You had security guards as your linemen. That wasn't the case. I mean, you had a couple trips to the mechanic, right? But for the most part, they were stable. I think also, too, want to point out the Kevin Dotson take, 100%. That totally changed the complexion of this offensive line. He set himself up to be a top 25 free agent this offseason. I think it makes a lot of sense to be back on the Rams at the right price, because pass protection, run blocking, I think that was the difference. I think that the pass protection definitely was stable. It was above average, but it was the run blocking that really impressed me with this offensive line. Transition gap scheme runs with the duo run plays with Kyron Williams. They were getting after it. And I think Steve Avila, finding him, he was absolutely someone that exceeded expectations because of the durability and the way he was able to finish this season. But I'm encouraged by this offensive line. I think Alaric Jackson is someone where he kind of had my doubts a little bit, but he did have enough flashes where I don't think you necessarily have to 100% go out there and say, okay, no reason this first round pick on a left tackle. It would be nice, but I think that the edge rusher spot is more valuable, especially the team what they're trying to do next season.
I think if you find a left tackle that you think is going to hold down that position for 10 years, then you go take him, right? Because I don't think that Jackson is that, but he's certainly good enough to be your guy for right now and going into next season. Just to go back to Dotson really quickly, because I think you bring up a good point, D-Mac, that the way that they were able to utilize Kyron Williams in large part was because of that offensive line and the ability that they had. But Dotson brought a level of nasty to this team that I don't know that was there a year ago. That obviously Avila comes in, he's a big, strong, wide guy, and he's a nasty player. Dotson is a nasty player, and I'm meaning this as a compliment, right? Coleman Shelton, those three guys in the middle, tough, physical guys that like to put their hands on them. When we've seen guys in the past in the Rams offensive line, it was more of a technique, a speed, a finesse, and they were trying to win like that. And we've seen it happen before, but everything needs to be on point. And the second it starts to break down, you really don't have a lot of plan Bs there. These guys will fight you. These guys were really tough interior offensive linemen. And Dotson, a guy that had been around the block a few times, that came in and just kind of brought that Pittsburgh mentality with him. It really kind of set the tone for the entire O-line. And it was huge. Just that really physical, tough front five.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was what Kevin Dotson changed with this offensive line, that he brought that nastiness factor. And I remember when they traded for him, I heard people out there, he's going to provide depth. He's going to provide depth. But said, look at his numbers. This is someone who, when he takes that starting job, he's not giving it back. Yep. And that's absolutely what happened. He took that starting job. He ran with it. And this Rams offensive line, they got the job done. They allowed this offense to perform the way they did. And without them this season, they wouldn't have been in the playoffs without the performance of this offensive line. Now, there was something that did not go the Rams' way this year that we hoped would. We're going to talk about that next and how it impacts the Rams' free agency plan. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
Are you thinking about getting that ticket to the big game that you haven't quite gone out there and ordered yet? Gametime. Put the Gametime app on your phone, because Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy all of your tickets for sports, music, comedy, theater, everything. And right now, new users get $100 off when they buy a big game ticket with the code Vegas100, right? What would you do with an extra $100 in Vegas if you were there for the big game? Would you buy a great dinner? Would you put it all on red? You could absolutely do whatever you want. It's Vegas, right? You got free money in your pocket. So that's why you got to put the Gametime app on your phone and use that code Vegas100 when you buy a big game ticket. And of course, you're going to get to see the view from your seat before you buy. You know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All in prices up front, so you know you're getting a great deal before you check out. It's not that, all right, check out, but whoa, where did that come from? Not with the Gametime app. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, even an hour after it starts. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Right now, all Gametime users get $100 off a big game ticket with the code Vegas100, right? Terms apply. Just download the Gametime app, use the code Vegas100 for $100 off a big game ticket. Or if you're not going to the game, you can use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, Travis, here at our final segment here, we're talking about that edge rusher position that we talked about earlier. And one of the things that didn't go the Rams' way, one of the things that didn't go right was the outside linebackers, as the kids say, they were mid as far as their overall production. I mean, they finished with the fifth worst team pressure rate as a unit, 18.7% this season. And you had guys like Aaron Donald and Kobe Turner. They were doing damage from the interior. And Hoecht and Young, they did have some flashes, but consistently weren't taking advantage of that. And you look at Byron Young, I think for a rookie at that position, definitely had his flashes, definitely flashed some potential. And I think that he has a bright future. But overall, a 63.5 overall PFF grade, 42 tackles, 8 sacks, and 50 pressures. Then you got Michael Hoecht, a 60.7 PFF grade, 6 sacks, 39 pressures. That is not going to get it done when that's such a premium position right now in the NFL.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. Your quarterback pressure can't come from defensive tackles, right? And Aaron Donald aside, because he's Aaron Donald, and that's just a totally different animal altogether. So we're putting Donald aside. But if Kobe Turner is doing what he's doing, somebody on the outside's got to eat. Somebody on the outside has to take advantage of the fact that Turner and Donald are doing what they're doing. I'm with you. I think Byron Young is a really intriguing guy. I think that if he continues to get better, he could be a really good addition to this team. I like him. Michael Hoecht, I just think he's being played out of position. I just don't think that that's what he does particularly well. I think he's a good player. I think that he's versatile. I think that he would be a guy that you'd want to have on your team because he can do a lot of different things for you. But if that's the guy you're relying on to go get the quarterback from the outside, I don't know if that's the right guy for it. You've heard me complain the every days. I know this. Seeing him try to cover guys is just one of those things that makes you want to bang your head on the desk. You got to get better there. With no disrespect to Michael Hoecht at all, I just feel like that's a guy that you need to have a better player at that position than they have right now. And not that you got to move on from him, not that you can't use him in other ways, but I'm reasonably high on Young, and I'm not on Michael Hoecht.
I could not agree with you more. I can't stand to watch. I mean, there's a better chance that a Bills kicker makes a clutch kick in the playoffs than Michael Hoecht getting it done in coverage. It ain't happening. Okay.
Wide right.
It's wide right, man. Hey, come on, Bass. Jeez. How about the guy crying? How do you feel about guys, grown men crying at football games for the NFL teams? I kind of felt for the guy.
Look, I don't like to see anybody suffer like that necessarily, but come on, man, stop. It just stopped. It was just such a bad kick. Like, it's one thing if it's leaving and the big gust of wind kind of makes it miss that thing was just right from the second it left his foot. It was right, went right, started right, went further right. It just, what a disaster. The Rams, probably should have beat Detroit. The Rams had a chance to do it. I think they would have beaten Tampa Bay, but the Rams won a Super Bowl a couple of years ago. It keeps you warm at night. The Buffalo Bill fans, I can't imagine what they're going through with Josh Allen having a really, really good NFL quarterback, and you just can't get past that dude from Kansas City. No matter what you do, it's not enough. That's tough.
The Bills are freaking cursed. The Bills are absolutely cursed. I don't know. You can't cry, grown man on national TV like that. I mean, do what I do. Find a bathroom stall and start sobbing up there, right? I mean, that's how a grown man does this, okay? But no, I mean,
push those feelings down. Don't let anybody see them.
Exactly, 100%. But I agree with you. The Michael Hoecht, I mean, you're not going to see Muggsy Bogues starting at center getting tip-offs, right? We can't see the Michael Hoecht experience. And look, at the end of the day, I think they realize that, and that's why I am very adamant, whether it be a Josh Allen, whether it be a Brian Burns, whether it be a Danielle Hunter. I think those are the big three. I need Danielle Hunter, Brian Burns, or Josh Allen in Rams horns to start next season. Then I'm going to start to feel really good about the edge rusher position. Kind of going back to what you said in the first segment, though, if a top left tackle becomes available, right? If that definitely is something that they could get if they strike out some of the other positions, sure, I would absolutely be okay with going that route. They truly believe he can be a franchise left tackle. But yeah, the edge rusher position needs to be addressed in a big way this offseason.
Take the best guy. Hey, if we're talking draft, take the best guy. Who's the best player? If you have your draft board and there, I don't know. And I was going to say, I don't know if you take it. I think you do take a quarterback. I think if you have a guy on that board that you love, even if it's at a position that you don't necessarily need today, I think you take him anyway. There are a lot of ways to find players, especially if you're the Rams going into the 2025 season. You got the draft, you got free agency, you got trades. They've proven that they can make it happen in all three of those lanes. And unless Snead and Sean McVay and Kevin Demoff and Stan Kroenke, I trust. Those guys have made a lot of good decisions since they've come back to LA, and I'm going to keep letting them make them. Yeah,
if you get Fuaga out of Oregon State, something like that, I'd be here for it, but I'll believe it when I see it. When I see that player walking across the stage and hugging Roger Goodell in the first round, with the hat on. When that happens, I'll actually believe they're going to make that first round pick. Until then, I'm in wait and see mode because this is less Snead. We know what this team can do with those picks. The FM picks era could be back. But that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. As always, you can follow the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, at Travis Rogers. And until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.